let's talk about the Eagles' defensive front. This is a chart that came out prior to this weekend's games. From left to right, it shows stunt rate over expectation. From top to bottom, it shows pressure rate. You can see that the Eagles are on the far left of this chart. That means they run stunts less than any other team in the NFL over expectation. Now, what does that mean? It's not necessarily a bad thing. They're a good pressure team. They're above average in pressure rate. What it means is that they're not creative with their defensive front. They just trust their defensive front to win without exploiting mismatches, without running games. And so you hit your bye week, it's a time to make some adjustments. And I thought the Eagles actually made some adjustments that you could see in the Steelers games in terms of how they generate pressure. Let's go to the opening drive of the game. On the opening drive of the game, on this side we have Josh Sweat and we have Haason Reddick. Now it should tip you off right away. Something's up when you have two edge rushers on the same side. On the other side we have the big guys. We've got Javon Hargrave, Brandon Graham, and then Fletcher Cox all the way out here on the edge. That's going to cause the offensive line to slide their protection to the right. And so the Eagles pass rushers on this side are going to rush. They're going to push against that slide protection. And Haason Reddick's going to take a step in at the guard, and then he's going to loop around. And if this works properly, it should get him a free run at the quarterback. And so we roll the tape. You see them push against that. There's that first step by Reddick, and now he's racing, and he gets an easy sack there. And notice, even if they didn't do this, just watch Josh Sweat coming off the edge. Watch this dip under the left tackle. He meets him at the quarterback. And so either one of those guys could have gotten a sack if the other one didn't win. But the start of the game, the Eagles came out, and they ran that stunt with great success. Now let's look at another play. This time we have Fletcher Cox, Haason Reddick, Javon Hargrave, Brandon Graham, and Robert Quinn. And what you're going to see here, Robert Quinn is going to attack the inside shoulder of the offensive tackle. And Brandon Graham's going to start to rush in, and then he's going to loop back around the tackle. And so we roll this tape, and you'll see this. Graham comes in, engages, and then he loops around. Now it turns out to be a screen pass, and it goes for a gain. Sometimes that happens. If it's not a stunt there, maybe Brandon Graham actually reads that out. So there's pros and cons to running games like this, but it does make things more chaotic for the offensive line. Let's look at another one. This time we've got Fletcher Cox, who spent a lot of time lined up outside of offensive tackles in this game. Fletcher Cox is out here. We've got Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave, Haason Reddick, and Josh Sweat. Again, it's the same thing with Reddick and Sweat lined up on one side. That should tell you that something is up. And so Brandon Graham is going to attack to the right. Javon Hargrave is going to attack to the right into this gap. Haason Reddick is going to come in, and then he will loop around. Now the Steelers do a better job picking this up. Maybe they noticed earlier in the game what's going on. Their center is actually going to meet him in the hole here. And so we see the center, he comes around, and he's going to meet Reddick in the hole. Now, unfortunately, Game Pass is just kind of a garbage product, and so that's the best footage I can get of what happens after the initial snap. But you get the idea. It generates pressure, it generates chaos, but ultimately Kenny Pickett is able to escape. Let's look at another one. This time we have Josh Reddick, Haason Reddick, Milton Williams, Javon Hargrave, and Josh Sweat. This time, Javon Hargrave is going to attack this gap. He's going to attack the B gap, and Josh Sweat is going to take a step in, and then he will loop inside to try to go make a play. Now, the center is going to pick this up, and what you're actually going to see is Javon Hargrave beat his double team. So you see the center here, he's waiting in the wings. He's going to catch Sweat on this game, but Javon Hargrave fighting through a double team against his former team, he gets the sack. He had a big day with 2 sacks and 6 pressures. Now let's look at this one. One of the things that's really cool about this one, we've got Reddick, Cox, Tui Pelotu, and Robert Quinn. You're going to see Cox shift from a 3 technique. This is lining up between the guard and the tackle. You're going to see him shift over to a 2 technique, which means he's directly on top of the guard. And so we'll see this shift happen. And after the shift, at the snap of the ball, he's going to attack the outside shoulder of the guard. He's going to attack through the A gap. And Reddick is going to loop in from behind. And so let's roll this tape and you can see what I'm talking about here. He attacks inside. He attacks the center right. And so he's occupied the center. Reddick engages, and then he disengages, and he's going to run around. Now, this ball comes out fast, but just watch this one more time. We get the late shift, attacking the center. Reddick starts to attack the tackle, and then he comes inside if that ball's not coming out so quick, he would have had pressure on Kenny Pickett. Now let's show one more. This one's not a stunt, but this is something else that the Eagles don't do very often, and it's that they're going to bring pressure from the slot. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is going to blitz out of the slot. Now, look at the alignments here. We've got our defensive tackles are aligned as a 4-eye technique, so they're the 4 technique shaded inside. They're just inside the offensive tackle. We've got a wide 9 alignment, a 9 technique here, and so you're basically taking the center out of the protection. Who is he going to block? Unless you send Kazir White up the middle, there's nobody for the center to block. And so what you've done is you've made it a 2-on-2 game on this side and a 2-on-3 game on this side of the formation because it's an empty backfield. And so we roll the tape and you're just going to see that it's untouched for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who does a good job of breaking down. He doesn't let Kenny Pickett get outside the pocket, and he makes the tackle. Now, it's a good thing that he was able to get home because I have no idea what this coverage is. There were backups in the game at this point. It was near the end of the game. You should never see at the snap of the ball when you're bringing this slot defender. You have one defender holding his arms up like this out over the outside receiver. There's nobody over this receiver, nobody over this receiver. You've got a guy running across the formation late. That's Kevon Wallace. So the coverage behind this was a disaster. But a lot of times, a good pass rush, it can cover up for mistakes in coverage. And so the Eagles had a great game, generating pressure, generating sacks on Kenny Pickett, and they did it largely by using some creativity with the defensive front that we just haven't